we still consider y'all our home church. We loved our time at Sunset, and it's so awesome to see so many familiar faces and friends. And so hi to everybody. And I'll let Brittany give the recap.
Yeah, so we left Miami. Brian had come back from the Peace Corps. I finished my master's. We went to medical school together. We started in the Caribbean. We ended up in Michigan, finished up medical school. We
had our son in Michigan.
Yeah, we had our son. We split ways for a while. Brian went to New York to start his emergency medicine training. I went to Dallas to start general surgery. Paths got crazy again. Brian ended up in Dallas, but then I went to Michigan. I started my training. Then we moved back to Texas, to Austin, so I could surgery. Brian finished emergency medicine. And this year I matched into something called a fellowship, which is kind of extra training that you do after your surgery training. So now we're here. I'm at Massachusetts General, which is a Harvard affiliate, which puts me at probably the best possible place to be training in the ICU. So Brian is a emergency medicine doctor at a community hospital here. And then I'm a general surgeon working with trauma and then in the ICU here at Mass General now.
And in a couple months, we move again.
Yes.
Hopefully maybe the last time, we don't know, to Lubbock, Texas. We're moving to Lubbock. So.
But that's why we're in Boston.
Yeah.
Quite a whirlwind. I'm sure you're glad to be together in one spot.
Yes.
So before we get into the specifics of the COVID-19 pandemic, let's just jump in by talking a little bit about the role that science plays in your life, how you find a balance between science and your faith, and how your knowledge of the human body impacts your faith.
Yeah. So, I think that science, when we first started medical school, I think that there's never been a time that I felt more tested and more questioned in my faith than I did in medical school. I felt like so much of science, depending on how you see it, a lot of times it's, you either believe in science or you believe in God and creation, and the like. And it felt like two very diverging paths. But as we got further and further into it, I started to realize that, you start looking at all the mechanisms, you're taking biochemistry and microbiology and all these different things. And you start looking at how complex it is just to create one cell, and then to make those cells all fit together, billions and billions of them to create one person. You realize that there's no way that just happened by some weird chance. This is, I started to be able to realize that science is the way of us as humans trying to understand what God has made. And we don't always get it right. And it's one of those things where you trust science to some degree, but ultimately you trust God because he made it all. And I think one of the other things we learned about, what was it, micro, where you're gonna say that? Yeah, you go for it.
No, just that we were in medical school and we got to the part of physiology where you talk about how the body is literally physically held together. Like how do you keep from becoming a pile of mush? And it's this one molecule and it's called laminin, L-A-M-I-N-I-N.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed us what it looked like under the microscope. And it's literally a cross. Laminin looks like a cross. That's what physically holds the whole
like
body
your skin to you. It's really cool.
And so it's like we've had those little things along the way that are just these nice integrated moments of bringing faith and science together. And I think 100% as we've evolved from the basics of medical school and becoming doctors to now being very much in a clinical role and having lots of very sick patients, there's no way we would be able to do what we do without having an established faith. not only in how we treat our patients, but in also how we survive and mentally are able to handle treating so many sick patients for so long.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about how this pandemic has affected you both personally and professionally. And Brian, let's start with you, because you shared something with me about the effect this is having on your hospital and hospitals like yours that caught me off guard, really. I was surprised to hear this. So tell me a little bit about how this has affected you guys.
Yeah, I think, for me in the emergency department, I mean, coronavirus has just turned everything upside down for everybody. In the emergency department, we're actually seeing a decrease in the number of people who are coming to the ER for a number of reasons. One is, a lot of people staying home, so you don't have as many car accidents and, injuries and all that. But one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of is that people are too scared to come in because of the virus. They think, well, I'm not going there because there's people there that have it, so I'm just going to avoid it. So they have serious conditions, like they're having chest pain or they're having bad abdominal pain, and they wait days and days until it gets to be completely unbearable. And they come in extremely sick and have conditions that, like, a massive heart attack or a bad infection in their intestines, that if they'd come in when they first started feeling those symptoms and thinking maybe I should go to the ER, it would have been a lot more easily treated than it would have been than it was when they actually ended up coming in. And then we are seeing, in the other patients that we're seeing a lot of coronavirus. We're seeing a lot of patients who come in, and it's either one of two categories. They have it and they're super anxious about, I've got this virus, everybody's telling me that I'm going to die. Everything that I hear and read is saying that I'm going to die from this. And they require a lot of reassurance, a lot of just comfort. And then there's other people who have it and they've done their best to just stay at home, and they can't anymore because they're very short of breath, they're super sick, and they require a lot of care. So it's been mentally draining for both of us. It's just a disease that I've never seen anything like this before. It's been very tough. And I think both of us, we have difficulty sleeping at night. We have, lots of cases where, I talk about it over and over again with Brittany, just trying to wrap my head around, did I do the right thing? Did I, am I doing right by my patients? And it's been tough.
And tell us about the economic impacts that you told me about on hospitals like yours.
Oh yeah. So the hospitals are really hurting. They rely a lot on the elective surgeries. They rely a lot on, these cases that are coming in. They rely a lot on people using the ER for everyday accidents and all that. So when those aren't happening, when the elective cases aren't happening, their revenue is extremely down, and then they're having to buy massive amounts of protective equipment on top of that. So like my hospital the other day, our president sent out an email basically saying that they had received some money from the CARES Act, but the money that they received is, it sounds like a sizable portion. The money that they received is only going to cover 25% of their projected losses. And he's basically sending this email saying, we're going to do everything we can to get through this, but we really don't know what the future holds.
And what about you, Brittany? How have you been affected personally and professionally?
So professionally, to be in a pandemic hotspot in the last year of my ICU critical care intensivist training is pretty profound. I think professionally it's helping me grow a lot and I'm learning a lot, but man, it is a stretch. We're very used to having evidence-based care that we provide people. We know if you have a heart attack or you have a surgery and you need the ICU, I have learned all the ways in which to help you. And I know the ways to do that because of many decades of research. But with this virus, there is nothing like that. It's completely unprecedented, and we have no data to support anything that we're doing, which is beyond frustrating as the intensive is to not know exactly what is best for our patients. And of course, in medical school, your first thing is always do no harm. And so finding that balance of trying to treat people to get them better, but also doing no harm has been really hard. And people have even seen that in the media about all these different medications and, hydroxychloroquine and, Plaquenil, like all these things. And is it the new wonder drug? And we have to mentally make those decisions every day as to whether or not we're going to try it. This virus affects absolutely every organ system you can possibly imagine. And it's more than the media will show you, but every day as we make rounds in all of our patients, it's like, man, this stinking virus, it does not waver on anything that it affects. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. And then combine that with the huge volumes of people that we see. The hospital that I'm at, we've had over probably 1,200, maybe 1,500 coronavirus patients just at my hospital. And our ICUs have just kept growing and growing. We've made our operating rooms into ICUs. We've made the PACU, where you're supposed to go after surgery, we've made that into an ICU. We have to use nurses that have never been in an ICU before and try to teach them, while we're also dealing with people who are crashing and burning every few minutes, and everybody's really stretched thin. And so when you're already dealing with a lot of patients and a disease you don't know, and you are mentally and physically very, very tired and anguished, it is really challenging. So yeah, and we have to celebrate every little good thing, because there's a lot of bad things too. And then personally, I think the difficulty in being, I think we've been pretty supportive of each other from a marriage and a spouse standpoint. We have a very unique relationship like that not many people get to have, which is really been a blessing. But we had to send our kids away to be with their grandparents in Texas so that we could fully commit ourselves to our patients. And we haven't seen our 8-year-old or our 2-year-old in what, 5
2
days?
months. 2 months almost.
It's already been 2 months. Yeah. So that's all.
Yeah. So you've made a lot of sacrifices. You've sent your kids away. You haven't seen them. You've both been picking up extra shifts. So Brittany, you said something there and I want to pause for just a second, just remind everyone that's watching, we are recording this so you can come back and listen to it. And hopefully we'll have some time for some question and answers at the end. So if you have some questions, post those to the chat and we'll get to those toward the end of our class tonight. Just a second ago, Brittany, you talked about as a doctor, as a medical professional, your profession is knowledge-based. Tom Powell used to tell me, he used to describe medical school as trying to take a drink from a fire hose. The amount of information, then you both knowingly laugh at that. So you are definitely in a knowledge-based profession. And so you kind of touched on this. How much confidence do you normally have based on the knowledge and training you have when you're treating patients?
So it is, and he told us the same thing when we were applying for medical school. He said it's like trying to drink out of a fire hose.
At the time we were like, what are you talking about?
But then we went to medical school and we're like, oh my goodness, he was so right. But the difference is that at least there's a fire hose, and at least there is a, albeit grand, amount of information to attain. At least it's established and known. With this, it's like there's volcanic ash in the air, and there's rain, and there's snow, and it's like you're sticking your mouth out. If you're making that same analogy, you don't know what's pieces
water
are
and
right
what's not,
and what you should not take, and it's just complete disarray. And why I research is something I am interested in and is really important to me, and is why I came to this Harvard-based program. And it's why I've dedicated the time that I'm not at the hospital to hear. I mean, we've kind of created this like research table area so that I can be part of the groups that are helping change the face of how we treat this, because we won't know until we do all of this research and acquire this knowledge. And so we're working on that now, and that's the only way to fix that problem.
And so when something like this comes along that is unfamiliar, unprecedented, I think is what you called it, does that cause you to have doubts in yourself as you're trying to deal with this? And how do you deal with those doubts when they come up?
I talked to Brittany. I think she's kind of mentioning it, one of the fun things about our marriage is that, if we're working night, I mean, it doesn't even matter. I can call her whenever, she can call me whenever. If we have a question about something, I'll call her at 2 a.m. and be like, hey,
I'm up too.
Yeah, because she's up too, working and doing whatever, so it's like, hey, I need I've got this patient, this is what's happening, what are you doing in MGH? How are you treating this? And then otherwise, I mean, you're kind of, with other situations that you don't have time to do that. I had a really sick patient the other day who, we had to, do some things that we don't normally do. And there wasn't any time to think. You just kind of had to do it. You have to do what you feel is the best thing in that moment for the patient. You fall back on your training, you fall back on the medical knowledge that you have, and you fall back, on your faith. You sit there and you say, okay, I'm going to say a little prayer, and we're just going to go in and go for it.
So as Christians, we strive to know as much about God as we can. We read the scriptures, we search, we try to find as much information and facts as we can. But the reality is that we will never fully understand life. Hebrews defines faith as having confidence in the things that we don't know, the things that we can't see. So how does dealing with uncertainty in your medical profession help you process uncertainty in faith and in life?
Go ahead.
Me.
Yeah.
I think doing this job, you learn just how much is out of your control. You can give a medicine and it's supposed to work one way and it can work a completely different way. Or you think you come out, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've gone into a room and been in this new coronavirus era that we're in, gone in and be like, nothing that just happened in that room makes sense. The patient is telling me that they're having this weird symptom and this weird symptom and this weird symptom. None of that adds up physiologically. And during the workup, you do a chest x-ray or do a CT, and their lungs are what we call classic findings of COVID pneumonia, or coronavirus. And it just blows your mind. You're like, I had no idea that this patient who's young and otherwise healthy, under the age of 30, would come in and have COVID and have, blood clots in both his kidneys, killing his kidneys. It just, that kind of stuff it makes no sense. And so I think, so you have to kind of, you learn to trust your gut. You learn to trust what, that if you feel like something isn't right or something is going the right way, just keep doing it. You kind of trust your gut. I feel the same way with my faith. I think ultimately I know, you can't see God, it's not something that it's not necessarily tangible, but I have a strong belief that God speaks through those who are around you. Like, I feel like there are sometimes when I've had a tough day and Brittany will just say something randomly that I'm like, I needed that. I needed to hear that right then. Or, you have a patient who will just say something to you and comfort you in a time when, you should be comforting them, or a family member after a patient dies, who tells you, what, you did everything that you could. And in those moments, I really feel the comfort of God, and just in his presence and in my life. And at those times too, in the ultimate despair, when you have just lost a patient, just sitting there and saying a little prayer. And I was telling Brian this the other day, that, we had a really tough case, patient died. The patient had come in talking, but not very much, they're very short of breath, couldn't breathe. And no matter what we did for an hour and a half, there's nothing more we could do, and the patient ended up dying. And so we all kind of stood around, and I said a little prayer. And in such a weird moment, as I hadn't realized that at the time, I was trying to describe to Brian what it felt like in that moment. And I realized it's that same feeling you get when you're at church camp, and it's like kind of that last night and everybody's around the fire, you're singing songs, and you have that feeling of connectedness and just that presence of God. I had that same feeling in that room, which is really strange. It's such a strange time to feel that, but I did. And so it's that kind of stuff that makes me just know that, that God's there, and we are, He's watching over us and helping us through this.
Yeah, mine, I think it's some of the extremes for me, like the who were never supposed to survive, and then they start getting better, and then the tube comes out, and then you see them on the news being wheeled out with everyone clapping around them, and you think back to whenever you told their families, they'd need a miracle. There's just nothing really left, and so the extreme of that absolutely reaffirms your faith. But then honestly, alternatively, the most moving and profound moment for me also has come in death, in that I also had a patient who, and one of the hardest things about this disease has been the loneliness that we feel like it creates. I'm sure everyone here has been affected by it, but some more so than others. All of our patients in the hospital can't have visitors, which is so difficult, and especially those with COVID diagnoses, it is really hard on their families. And so I had a patient who wasn't doing well and wasn't going to make it, and it was time to say goodbye, and the family couldn't come in for their own health reasons. And so I asked them, I was moved to ask them. I was very busy that night, but I just felt it was so important for that patient to have someone with him, and to be comforted in those last moments. And so I asked the family, give me the names of all the people he would want to know that love him, and give me some music that would bring him comfort or joy that he knew. And so whenever it was time to pull the breathing tube, which they wanted to have happen after midnight, which happened to be Easter Sunday, I had to play both roles. Not had to, I chose to. And so I held his hand as the breathing tube was removed, and I whispered all of those names into his ear and told him that they all loved him. And I did it twice just to make sure. And then I never let go of his hand for 3 hours. And I sat there, and not once did I let go. And as his heart rate started to fall, and Frank Sinatra was the person that they wanted played, and Somewhere Over the Rainbow came on. And he took his last breath, and I looked up at the clock, and it was 3:16 on Easter Sunday. And it's like, John 3:16, Easter Sunday, I'm sitting with this man. Like, this is not a coincidence. This was my purpose tonight, and is just completely in a moment of very much sadness, is an absolute boost to my own faith, as hard or as odd as that may be.
So, wow, I can't imagine the profundity of that moment, and I admire you for doing that. Many Christians believe in the concept of calling, that through the combination of passions we have, through gifting from God, through our own study and diligence, we have a purpose to fulfill. We have a role that God intends for us to fulfill. Use that story to jump into your feeling about your calling to be in medicine and how your faith has guided your response to this pandemic.
So my mom's on here, so she can attest that I think I was called from an early age. It's kind of cliche. Everybody in medicine always says, "Oh, I wanted to be a doctor since I was a little baby." But they were pictures of me when I'm a toddler dressing up in doctor stuff. My grandfather was a physician, and I remember just looking up to him and seeing the amazing things that he did and the respect that he showed to his patients, and they returned showed to him. And just I saw that. To me, that was my role model, and that's who I wanted to be. And so that's kind of where my calling began. And then I think as we went through medical school and we went through residency, you really start to see that there are a lot of people in this country who need a lot, that they don't have a lot. You think about, you go on these mission trips to other countries, but you work, I trained in a county hospital in Dallas, Texas, and we had a largely underserved population there, and the amount of people that you take care of and are just grateful to have a doctor to talk to. You may not even be able to solve their problem, but they are the most grateful, population of people that they just say, "Thank you so much for taking time. I appreciate you just even listening to me." And you try to, help them as much as you can. And at that point, you start to realize this is really why I went into this. I want to help people. And so as soon as we started hearing about this coronavirus, and as soon as, it was obvious that we were probably going to have our coworkers get sick, or they were going to have, that there would be a big strain on the system. I think there was no question in either of our minds that this is what we're here for. This is what we trained for. And we may be scared. We don't do at that, especially at the beginning of all this, we had no idea what was happening. We didn't know what numbers to believe and what to not believe. And, but there was no question in our mind that this is our time. We need to step up and help as many people as we can.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I go through really wide variations of feeling like it's my calling. I'm surrounded by really bright people who are way smarter than I am. And so I often feel very lesser in terms of worldly smartness. But then I compare where I am now to where I was a decade ago and think, no, everything was leading up to this moment. And what are the odds that I would be here in the ICU in Boston in 2020 at the end of my ICU training in this moment? Like, what are the odds? And then I give myself some credit that I am doing right by these people. And I'll tell Brian, you know what? I caught this thing that no one else caught. And I saved this person when no one else could save them. And I did this thing. And I think you have to be a little bit, you have to remind yourself that it is your calling, and that you are here for a purpose. But I do go through wide variations in that. We also, our own worldliness of being scared plays into that too. We, at the very beginning of this, after we dropped off Knox and Tinsley, our kids in Texas, I came back home and we sat down and I was like, we need to make addendums to our will, and we need to make sure that if something happens to us, and we went through all these iterations of, okay, if I'm in the ICU and you're not, then this is what we'll do. And if I'm intubated, and if something happens to me, then this is what we need to do. And we had to go through all of that. And it's not a fun thing to do, but we laid there one night in bed, and I told Brian, I'm scared, but I feel like this is what I have been working my whole life towards, and it's what I was really born to do, and I think I'm good at it. And I need to trust that and do it.
I think like what you said about ending up here, you look back, I found a lot of power in looking back in your past and seeing where you came from and the path that you had to take, the path that God led you on. And sometimes I think at the time, when we were moving around the country, and there were times when we were like, who's going to be in residency where, and hey, what are we going to do with our son, and how is this going to work out? There was a lot of prayer that was going on about like, what are we getting put through right now? Why are we having to go through all of this, and what is the purpose of all of this? And you look at it now and you think, wow, like it was all, a lot of that was leading up to this moment. I think if we hadn't had those experiences, we wouldn't have been as willing to move across the country for you to come here, and we wouldn't have been in these situations. And then you think, well, there are patients that she has treated that another person, they're like she's saying, they're all these smart, very smart people. Brittany's very smart too. She's being humble, but that she caught something that nobody else at Harvard caught, or that she treated somebody that nobody else thought of how to treat that person. And the same thing for me, like there's patients that I'm treating that it's like I was there in that patient's room for a purpose, because I had seen something in my previous training that I knew immediately as I walked in, oh, it's that, and everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, that's what they've got. And sure enough, that's what they had. So, I really feel like God puts us through those trials and puts us through those struggles, and ultimately has our best intentions in mind, and putting us in a situation where he knows that we're going to be, helping the most useful. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see the chat, but Brian, your mom posted a comment. She said, reminds her, and I agree, of the passage from Esther where Mordecai tells Esther, perhaps this was the moment for which you were created. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that the people of Boston are lucky to have you guys working there. So it's been trendy in the media, and I'm not disparaging this idea at all, but it's been trendy in the media to refer to medical professionals as heroes. Do you guys feel like heroes?
No. No, we feel like we're doing our job.
Yeah.
And our job is just a little more demanding than normal. But I've never felt like a hero. I feel like I'm doing what I was trained to do. Honestly, I feel privileged. Like I feel so privileged that I have attained the training and the learning to be able to be here and to be able to take care of people who trust me with their lives without their families around, and who just entrust us with their entire life. That is such a privilege and so humbling.
Yeah.
I think there is, I would never put myself on the same level or identity as a soldier in war, but I do feel small bits and pieces now of maybe some of those elements of how they feel, that whole front lines in the battlefield. I do feel some of that. And I feel like, I kind of said today on one of my social media posts that I feel like there are a lot of battles that we are losing because we don't know how to treat this. And last week in the ICU for me we had so many bad outcomes, but it's hard to remember that there have been a lot of good outcomes too. We dwell on the bad ones, and through research and through continuing to give good care, we will win the war. It's just that these battles really hang heavy on us.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, what about you?
No, yeah, don't feel like a hero. To me, the heroes are my kids or our kids. They Knox is old enough to understand what's going on. He's 8, and that he has that servant heart. You know, he just is always asking us how we're doing. He's always asking about our patients, and you know, he knows all the medical lingo, so he's able to have, like, you know, doctor conversations with us. And
I called him yesterday, and he said, "Mom, you know, I was thinking maybe I could have like a lemonade stand and charge like 50 cents for lemonade so that we can have some money to give to the healthcare workers and the patients."
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the heroes too are just, I mean, like the single mom who doesn't have a job, but she's staying home with her kids, homeschooling them. And that's a hero. You know, she doesn't have to do that. You know, she could find some way to, you know, not follow the social distancing rules. You know, the people who aren't getting a lot of the attention, who are literally keeping this country going, like the people who are like the waste management, you know, coming and picking up our trash every day, the janitorial staff at the hospital, constantly cleaning, keeping everything clean, so that this, you know, those people, they are, and then I think teachers as well, you know, you really find out who those essential people are, you know, who really make life, you able to help us to really be able to live the life that we live. And so, you know, those people don't get paid enough for what they do. You know, they do, it's amazing the work that they do and the dedication that they have to it. So those, to me, those are my heroes in this moment.
All right, so I want to touch on a couple ideas a little bit more here. You guys have to think. So what I've noticed in the media and just kind of in people's responses, a couple of things. One is a desire to an anxiety over not having an immediate resolution to this problem, and not just the medical problem, but the social distancing, the staying at home. And then the second kind of related is the idea that we're desperately searching for a magic bullet to solve everything, whether it's a particular miracle drug, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's social distancing, mass testing, contact, whatever the magic bullet is.
Yeah.
And as Christians, I think we sometimes fall into that same trap. We're looking for an immediate response from God. We're looking to a magic bullet to faith, whether it be the right kind of prayer, the right kind of meditation, the right kind of, you know, Bible reading plan. Talk about how you've experienced that desire for an immediate resolution, that desire for a magic bullet, and again, how that kind of how you can take those lessons from medicine and adapt them to our faith life.
Yeah.
So whenever you say that, I think of, yes, our earnest desire for something that works, anything that works, quite honestly. And even among the most brilliant brains, that is the coolest part about being here, is I am privy to hear all these really smart people talking about all their really smart ideas to fix this really terrible problem across the globe even. And yet all of those people disagree, and everybody's opinions, they all are very smart, but they all have opinions, and they're just opinions based on what they know. And there's just no shortcut to putting in the hard work. There's no shortcut into reading. There's no shortcut into letting time show you the way and how, and the most effective way in which this is conquered and accomplished. Mm-hmm. And I think, I mean, that kind of parallels with me, with my faith too. I think, you know, faith is by no means a show up on Christmas, anoint thyself, and you are good to go. It is a lifetime of evolution and ebb and flow, and putting in the hard work and the lonely nights and the deep darkness and prayer and the good peaks where you don't forget about the low lows. It really parallels both of those things. So to me, it's just no shortcuts, and really waiting and putting in all the hard work in order to find the absolute and perfect result at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it does take, just like faith, it takes patience, and you have to be willing to stay the course, not go off on a tangent and say, well, maybe this way will, get us to where we want to be sooner. Or if I yeah, I think you know better than, I think, you have to trust the scientific process is in place for a reason. And if you follow it, it may not get you that perfect answer that you're looking for, but it's not going to get you into worse trouble. You're not going to end up giving some medicine that's going to kill somebody. So you have to trust that scientific process. And I get comfort in the fact that, you think we don't know a lot about this virus, but in retrospect, you really do. I watch a program. I was born in the wrong year. I should have been born way earlier. But I watched this program called CBS Sunday Morning. It's like a news program. It's like one of my favorite shows. And they had this piece about, they had an epidemiologist who treated people during the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And he was mentioning about how he was amazed at how much we already know about coronavirus and the enemy that we're battling. Back then, before they really knew what AIDS was, it was 2 years before they knew that it was like a virus. And then it was another year before they had a test for the virus. So you're talking about 3 years of this disease that they couldn't even test for. And then it was another few years before they had a treatment. And you're talking about, we know what coronavirus looks like. We know, for right now, we kind of know who's most at risk. We know how it can be, contained somewhat, and how we can prevent it from being spread. We know so many things about it. And I think in your faith too, sometimes I feel like I've been in those moments where I felt despair and just kind of felt like, what is going on? I don't know what's going on. I don't trust this process that I'm going through. And you think back to those times where God has led you, or you've gotten, you can look back to those times in your life when you've had those same feelings and realize that was for a reason. Or you look to the Bible and you can say, wow, there are answers in here to my questions. So I think trusting the process, trusting your faith, and just realizing that you know a lot more than what you may realize.
So during the early period of the history of the church, Christians were known to care for the sick. Even when pandemics were happening, Christians would take those people in, care for them, help them out, even at the risk of their own lives. David Lipscomb, famously, Nashville was having a cholera epidemic, and he stayed in the city to give aid and comfort to people who were hurting. We have a much more modern, robust healthcare system. Our society doesn't need or allow Christians to care for the sick the way we did in the past. So in your mind, how can the church, how can Christians respond in the same manner that our forefathers did, our foremothers did, within the confines of the current system?
Go with this.
Well, funny aside, I'll start with our son. That he's been introduced to the right principles whenever he tells Brian had told him that he had a patient who was dead and came to the emergency room, and he brought him back to life. Oh, yeah. And now he's still alive. And our son said, "Dad, so basically you're like Jesus." Which, and
I was like,
is
not close, but
the principle.
Yeah.
But that aside, I totally forgot where I was going.
You're talking about how Christians can help, even though you can't provide sick.
So I can only speak for what I know here in Boston, and Boston is, like you said, hot spot, absolutely inundated. So our healthcare system is maybe a little bit different than other spots around the country, but man, the support that we get from outside organizations, outside families, outside anything, it means so much. As we walk in the doors and see posters from little kids or from groups or quilts or anything walking in the doors of the ICU, to see those physical displays of people who have thought about you enough to send that, it means so much. And then families and organizations who send food in so that we can eat at 2 a.m. in the middle of rounds, and have dinner catered for us or hot meals brought in. That means a lot. And so I think in the modern era of helping, like that is no small thing.
Yeah.
It means a lot. It is a morale boost. It keeps us physically going to do our jobs. We are really grateful. So that, I mean, those are kind of one thing I can think of.
And I think, I think at this time you realize it's the simple gestures, right? Like picking up that phone and calling somebody who, is, maybe alone. We have one of our babysitters who obviously they're not babysitting for us anymore, but she likes to bake. And so every once in a while, she still has a key to our apartment. Every once in a while we'll come home to a surprise plate of cookies or something, and it's, like a little thing like that. Just showing love. There's so many people right now that are hurting, they're mad, they're frustrated, they can't work, they can't support their families. And you see a lot of tension over that. And I think that just showing support and love, telling people we hear you, we understand you, we are here for you, is there anything that we can do? I know Sunset did that for us when we were in, and when we were there, we were poor, not even medical students yet. And we had so many people who just by being our friends, and I mean, they made our life so rich, and to this day, it's our favorite memories.
I think too, I mean, seeing that visual of like dressed in white at patient's bedside, like those old images of like caring and tending to the sick. I will say while that's not going to be the case for the church now, in the hospital, at patient's bedside, the mental and the psychological sadness that this brings is profound.
Mm-hmm.
Not only to our patients that are in the hospital, but people in nursing homes, people in rehab centers, people who are high risk, who are left at home and can't get out and see other people, to go up to their windows and hold up a sign, or to put your hand against the glass so they can see it. That is a whole other aspect of healthcare that is not minimal. Brian sees a lot of people in the ER, and I've seen a lot of people in the ICU, unfortunately, who have suicidal thoughts and who have lost jobs and struggled with mental anguish. And it's that feeling of being alone and like there's nothing good left in the world. Mm-hmm. And so that aspect of helping people not feel alone by visiting their window or giving them a call or being outside to wave hi while they're in the nursing home, I think would be very far-reaching and appreciated.
Christianity is that. It's the good news, And I feel like you talk about that and it can brighten anybody's day.
All right. So we're running short on time. So let me ask you this. Would you say that this pandemic has more challenged your faith or strengthened your faith? And how have you maintained your connection spiritually during this time?
Both. Definitely challenged it, but I feel like it's been strengthened. I feel like I've never really prayed in a patient's room before until this. Now I've done it several times. Normally I don't bring my faith. I bring my faith, but I don't express it verbally in the emergency room. I treat people, as if they're my Christian brothers and sisters, and try to show them love and comfort and compassion. But praying and offering words of encouragement has become a new norm for me in the ER. I think it's definitely challenged it, just in the fact that you see so much badness. You see so many people that are hurting, and you think, why are we having to go through this? But at the same time, you see you get those moments of clarity when you do have these amazing things happen. And you have, basically miracles happen. We had a guy, I was telling my son about, who basically was dead for like 2.5 hours. And he kept dying, and we'd get him back, and he'd die again, and we would get him back. And I finally got onto the phone with his brother, who was his next of kin. So that was his kind of, by law, that's his decision maker. And I told his brother, I was like, this is it. I can't keep doing this to him. It's not the way that we should be treating him. If he dies again, that's it. We're done. And his brother said, I agree. That's fine. So I went into the room, and I told our staff that I had talked to his brother, and that as soon as he lost pulses again, that was going to be it. He didn't lose pulses again. He from that point forward, he was completely stable. He started to breathe on his own. He started to, you could start to see that life was coming back into him. And it's those kind of moments where you're just like, okay, it's nothing I did. I hadn't started I didn't do anything new. All the same medicines were still going. Every medicine that we had basically was still going. And so it's those moments where you're like, this was out of my hands. It's pretty cool.
I think for me, again, kind of both, on a kind of worldwide level and on a global level, it makes me sad and question and wonder what is the purpose of this, kind of like in wartime, like I don't understand how this could possibly be for his glory. Like how does that work? And I still don't have the answer to that. But I will say that I think on a personal level, absolutely my faith has jumped leaps and bounds, not only from the long, hard prayers, like Brian is saying, being in my call room at 2 a.m. and not having anything else to do but pray, because that's the last thing I have. But also this has brought me a interview with a news anchor here in Boston, and she and I have connected through faith. And like, how cool is that this prominent news anchor in Boston is one of the strongest women of faith I've ever met. And so we are both up at 12. She's doing research and I'm at the hospital, and we share verses and encouragement. And she sent me a new devotional Bible, and like, and no other time would that have been established and so encouraging. On a personal level, I've absolutely grown in my faith.
So this is the end of our normal class time. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask Julie if she would to unmute Paco. I'm going to ask Paco if he will to say a prayer in just a moment. Once the prayer is over, I know there are people that may need to go, so feel free to leave if you need to. Brian and Brittany have offered to stick around and do some question and answers, maybe have a little bit further. Are you guys still up for that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're going to do is I want to thank you guys for doing this. I want everybody to kind of, on your screen there, they don't hear it, but give them a round of applause for doing this. My understanding is last week Brittany worked 7 nights in a row. Brian's going on night shifts again here soon. Their time off is precious, and so I wanted to thank them for this. You already told us what's next. You're moving to Lubbock in the fall, where I understand, Brittany, you're going to be teaching at Texas Tech, right?
Yes, I'll be a trauma surgeon, intensivist, and I'll be a professor at Tech.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Brian, do you have a role yet?
I'm going to be at Tech too. We'll be at the same hospital for the first time. It's going to be interesting. And I'm going to be teaching as well. I'll be teaching emergency medicine residents.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask Paco to pray, but before he does, guys, tell us how we can be praying for you specifically at this moment in time.
Just that we're making the right decisions, and that the people that we're making those decisions for are able to be at peace.
Yeah, my prayer would be that the number of ICU needs goes down, because me and my coworkers are about stretched to our limit, and not sure how much more we can take, but that's not going away until we're not going anywhere. So if the number of patients needing ICU care could come down, that would be really helpful.
All right, so if we can get Paco unmuted, I'm going to ask him to pray for us. There, you're ready to go. Okay, Paco.
Well, I want to thank you, Brian, for thinking of this, and Brittany and Brian. Man, it's great seeing you guys again. We really miss you, and we think of you a lot, and just grateful that we have crossed paths. And but let's go to our Father in prayer. Heavenly Father, we're grateful, Lord, that you are our Father, that you are the one that holds us in the palm of your hand, Lord. And we're just so grateful for being your sons and daughters in this world, Lord, and that our faith is leaning on you, Lord. Lord, we're grateful for the way that you have blessed Brian and Brittany, and we just grateful for the way that their faith is so strong in you, even when they were here and thinking about being doctors. They're just so grateful for the way that you have touched their lives, and the way that with their work that they have brought you into their work and into the hospitals and touched so many lives, Lord. I pray that you will continue giving them the strength to do your will, and giving them the knowledge to do your will, Lord, in this as being doctors in this high stress job. And I also pray for their 2 kids, Lord, and their parents, and the way that they are giving to this time, so they can be there for those that are hurting. And I just ask that you would bless them, they would bless their parents and their kids, Lord, during this difficult time. We're grateful for the Father of being a Father of mercy, a Father of love, Lord, and a Father that we can always lean on, and you are always there to answer our needs, Lord. Again, I ask that you will continue blessing, and that you will answer prayers, that we will overcome this, and that a cure will come quickly, Lord. Again, I just thank you for this time, and again, continue to bless those that are on the front line. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
All right, thank you, Paco. So again, if you have to leave, feel free to do so. Brian and Brittany, we do have a couple of questions in the chat, and if you have a question, feel free to submit that in the chat. Let me read the first one to you guys. It says, what do you tell your parents and grandparents about distancing and wearing protective gear and going out in public?
Well, yeah. So we tell them to avoid it if possible, to only go out, obviously if necessary. Right now the mask, wearing a mask has become mandatory in Massachusetts, and I know that it's still kind of voluntary in a lot of other places, but the mask wearing is more so to protect other people from you, and more as opposed to protecting you from other people. But if everybody does it, then we're all protected from each other. So wearing a mask is very helpful. I know Brittany's parents, like when we send packages and stuff, like they're leaving the packages out for 24 hours. And then they kind of wipe it down before they're, opening it and washing their hands again. But I think washing your hands for 20 seconds and doing it every time you think to do it, and anytime you go outside of your home, that's the best thing that we can do. And then the social distancing of staying, it's hard to not see your loved ones. It's hard to not go hug your grandkids or, your brother or your sister or your aunt or your uncle, but for their own safety, that's what you have to do. That doesn't mean you can't see them. We see people up here gathering in parking lots, parking their cars and, congregating together in that way. And I think that that's a beautiful thing to do too.
And when you're washing your hands, I have told my family, you should wash your hands like a surgeon does. So not just this, but getting in between your fingers. If you realize this, you're actually missing the backs of your hands. So scrubbing the backs of your hands, but then also this little web space is often missed. So get this little web space and then also come all the way up to like your elbows the whole way and make sure everything is like completely washed.
Your little instruction right there reminds me of a video that I saw early on. It was in Spanish, so I didn't understand a word of it, but I think it was a doctor who was demonstrating how to wash his hands.
Yeah.
And he was using black paint on white gloves.
Yes. Yeah.
Showing basically you can see what areas you've washed by doing that. So as a follow-up question to that, I've heard a lot of people talk on podcasts. What are your routines for yourselves to protect yourselves? Like, do the scrubs come off before you get home? What are you doing to protect yourselves? How does that work?
Yeah. As soon as I get home, get naked, get in the shower.
I mean, our state now, it's mandatory to wear everything. So we have to do all that stuff as we leave. Actually, in my hospital, before you even come in, you have to answer a questionnaire about your symptoms, and you have to show them your pass and have an ID and wear a thing and do your hand washing when you come in and when you leave. The best way, which honestly we don't do now, but if we had other, because we're both like covered in COVID all day long and we're not around anyone else, but when we were around other people and our kids were here and we had babysitters here, the best thing to do would be open the door, have Clorox wipes and a trash sack right there. Make sure no one else is home. Take everything off, put it in the trash bag, close trash bag, get Clorox wipes, tie trash bag, take trash bag immediately to laundry room, open with Clorox wipe, put trash bag in, start the wash, continue Clorox wipe, open like as part of your hand, turn on shower, then dispose of Clorox wipe, shower yourself, and then you're good to go. If you really want to be like,
which we
so how long does all that take?
Take a long time. We
don't anymore now that we're but when
the kids were here,
we a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question we have is, what advice would you give teachers as we prepare to go back to school possibly in the fall?
So, and I thank you, Julie, for giving me this opportunity to know what it's like to be a teacher and a fourth grade teacher, at least. Those kids, as much as we love them and as much as you want to be there for them, I would strongly suggest, almost social distancing in the classroom too. If you have the ability in a class to put desks apart, I think that you should definitely do that. I think that, you know, you institute a policy of no hand holding between the kids, no
Well,
hugs.
they shouldn't be hand holding.
Well, they might, I don't know. So
What school are you going
I was holding hands in 4th and 5th grade, I'm sure. So anyway, so, but you know, just no high fives, none of that. Just trying to keep the kids as far apart from each other as possible, as possible. And then the same thing for the teachers, you know, to make sure that everybody has their own supplies, their own set of crowns and paper and all of that, so that they're not sharing, you know, passing things around. I think the biggest blessing of this entire thing is that kids don't seem to be that affected by this, which just thank God. That to me is a huge blessing. But they can still carry it, and they can still give it to others who could be more affected. So I think just trying to implement as much social distancing in your classroom as you can.
All right, next question we have, and this is a good question. I like this. Because you and I talked about this a little bit on Sunday, Brian. Do you find medical staff or your colleagues or patients talking about God more now than before?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely see, and not so much, I guess, with the people that I am currently working for. I know that, you know, when I've prayed over patients, I've had some of those staff members like join me. But honestly, during the day, I'm going from patient to patient, and most of my time is spent on the phone with family members because they can't be there with their loved ones and updating them and all of that. So in my work setting, I haven't honestly paid attention to it. Online, I'm on a group of around 20,000 ER docs on this Facebook group, and there definitely is talk on there of people kind of sharing their faith or sharing their stories. But honestly, I haven't noticed much of an increase necessarily. Have you?
A little bit, yeah. In the ICU, I think people are more open, especially as we deal more with more death than normal. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, let's see. The next one I've got is, so some people think that we're moving too fast towards coming out of lockdowns and social distancing measures. How cautious should we be going forward as far as contact with those close to us and engaging in non-essential activities?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot.
We struggle with this too.
I mean, so there's us as individuals and there's us as a society. And like the whole point of flatten the curve was not that less people would be affected, it's that we wouldn't overwhelm our hospital system. So even by flattening the curve, we're still going to have a whole lot of people affected. That number doesn't change. It just is a matter of how many ICU beds we have available. We both feel like life has to resume at some point, and we just have to be smarter about it. And it's just however much risk. This is where I would be terrible in government, because to me it's like everyone needs to like police themselves and like it's as much risk as you want to take and whatever, which is not like a government appropriate response. But I don't have the right answer. I just know that for myself, I personally, from my own family, my family members that I feel like are at higher risk because of their age, their comorbidities, so things like even just high blood pressure and high cholesterol is really what I'm seeing across the board in ICU. A 50 or 60-year-old male who has high blood pressure and high cholesterol is like 70% of my ICU. Not all the crazy other things you're hearing about. So even that demographic, or the immunocompromised over the age of, I'll say 60, history of a transplant, lung problems, heart problems, diabetes, those people, I feel like, should absolutely be complete social distancing, 100% full force, full on, and that their family members should respect them enough and encourage them enough to do so. And then for the rest of society, I think at some point we have to return to this 6 feet away, only 50% of restaurants, lots of wiping down, and just kind of slowly evolve. That's my own personal thought.
I agree. I mean, wearing masks, keeping restaurants at lower capacity. I think it's going to be a long time before I feel comfortable going to sporting events where you have a lot of people. I think at this point right now, I would feel comfortable. I would feel comfortable going to the barbershop. I feel comfortable going to the grocery store. I feel comfortable going to the bank. I feel comfortable maybe going to a restaurant, but only eating with Brittany, like maybe not eating with other people that we haven't been quarantining with. Those are the things that I feel comfortable with right now. And then as time goes on and hopefully cases continue to go down, maybe my comfort level would expand a little bit.
As soon as we can get a vaccine, it will change the game.
Yeah. All right. So another question we have is, what can you tell us about antibody testing? Is it specific to COVID-19?
We should.
So
ask my mom about this.
Technically it is. It's still the only problem. It's still, so again, going back to the research part, there's still no evidence to say that having it, developing antibodies equals never getting it again. There just hasn't been enough time to say that. So while it seems like, I've seen some of the preliminary data, it seems like that's the case from what we can tell from Wuhan and Italy, but no one really knows the answer to that question. So state government officials, CDC, WHO, everybody still says you don't consider yourself immune completely because we still just don't know. All the data points to that it probably is the case, but still to be extra cautious. And so along those lines, same thing. So plasma seems like it is a really great option. It started with Ebola virus, seemed to work. And we're hoping that's the case now, but we've got to weigh the research once it comes out. So once we have enough patients and we've seen, they were going to get better anyways, but then we gave them plasma and it looked like it was the plasma, or was it really the plasma and it actually worked? We just don't know yet, but we're hopeful. Everything so far looks good, like it is.
The easiest way I think to understand it is, you think about flu. You have different strains of flu A, flu B. If you get flu A in 1 year, then the likelihood of you getting flu A again is very, very low, but you can still get flu B. And the coronavirus, we're hoping that's, there are a limited amount of strains, and whatever those strains are, hopefully the antibodies, that if you get it and you produce antibodies in your blood, that they'll fight all the strains. But that's the part that we don't know if it will or not. So.
And you mentioned your mom. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And
yeah.
I can't see if she's still here, but maybe she would want to tell us about her experience.
Yeah.
She's still here?
She is. Mom,
Julie, will you unmute her? I mean, she may not feel comfortable talking, but.
I can talk, yeah.
Tell us about your experience.
I went to visit Brian and Brittany in Boston on May the 7th, I guess it was, March the 7th for Tim's second birthday party. And Allison, meanwhile, my daughter in New York, said, "Mom, you're already on the eastern seacoast. Just come see me." So I took the boat bus on Sunday, March the
9th or 10th.
To see Allison in New York, and she had a sore throat that night. So long story short, all 7 of us got the virus. And I came home on Wednesday. I felt okay, but by Friday I had a sore throat and I ended up getting the virus. So at one point I texted Brian and Brittany. I was like, I'm feeling a little short of breath. Should I be worried about that? I just kind of felt like I was in Aspen. And Brian called me and said, Mom, you have to go to the emergency room right now. And I was like, no, I'm not going to the emergency room. He said, Mom, I'm going to have to insist. So I ended up going to the room where he served here in San Antonio. And it was such a bizarre experience. Back then, nobody knew much. And everyone was like, clear the hallways. Here she comes, you know, the contaminated person. And they never really proved that night that I had COVID. They tested me for everything else and did all the tests and CT scans. And a week later, I felt so much better. And after 16 days, I was completely well. But still no proof that I'd had it. But I'd lost my sense of smell for 8 days. And I kind of knew. All 7 of us lost our sense of smell. My daughter, all her friends that night at the piano bar in New York, everybody. So anyway, long story short, I went to the South Texas Blood and Tissue Center saying that I thought I'd had it. Could they use my blood? And they called me and said, please come in. We can, you know, we'll give you an antibody test. They tested me and my antibodies were really high. So for 2 Sundays now, I've given convalescent plasma, and it's felt so good to be able to do something to kill this stupid virus. So I'm hoping that my antibodies will stay high and I can go on and give like every week.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So that's the
But
antibody
they said that,
want to do. The antibody tests, I think they're fine. The ones that hospitals are using, that's totally fine. But these ones, the at-home kits and all of that,
I don't know.
can't trust those yet. You got.
They said that patients were literally, I asked this time when I went on Sunday, were you actually able to use this to help people? And they said, oh my goodness, people were waiting for us to finish so we could bring it to patients. And I know your hospital, Brian, and maybe yours, Brittany, but I know they've been using the plasma. So I'm hoping that will help to kill it, but.
Pretty awesome.
So Brian, you said it'll be a while before you're ready to go out to mass crowds, sporting events, types of things like that. So in your profession, what are you looking for to make you comfortable again?
Honestly, a vaccine. To me, that's good. That'll be what makes me feel comfortable going into a large crowd like that again. Because I mean, for me, technically I would be considered somewhat low risk, but if I get it, then that means I can't go to work for however long, right? And it doesn't, I've seen patients younger than me get intubated and have to be on a ventilator for however long. And then we don't know, you know, the permanent lung damage that could be caused by the virus. So I don't want to take that risk.
Or even worse, he gets it, he's
Yeah.
okay, but then he goes to the barber that is open,
Yeah.
and the barber is at risk,
yeah.
or the barber takes it home. Like, and
Yeah.
it's propagated, so it's really,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, look at me. I need a haircut.
Me too.
I do too.
We have a follow-up question on the antibodies. Let me pull that back up. It says, could one test positive for antibodies and negative for the swab test? Can an antibody test be positive for another coronavirus but not COVID-19?
That's a good question. The second question is a good question. I don't know the answer to that. The swab tests are inaccurate. So it's all dependent on who's swabbing you, how they're swabbing you. The tests we've had a lot of false negatives. There are people who definitely have it and their tests keep coming back negative for some reason or another.
Yeah, it's like a suggestion now.
Yeah.
The people that we have in the ICU, even it's like they are completely classic. Everything comes back negative. We can even reach all the way down their trachea, their windpipe, and grab a sample, and it's still negative, but we still treat them like they do because
There's no disease.
Not perfect.
There's no disease that causes the kind of findings that we see in coronavirus. We've never seen, like, you can do a chest CT, and my mom's chest CT had these findings too, and it is what we call pathognomonic, or basically it's a telltale sign that this is coronavirus. So that's what we go off of for the most part.
Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat. If somebody gets one in, I'll pose it to you. But other than that, any final comments or thoughts that you'd like to add before we go tonight?
Just love y'all.
I know we
miss everybody, and
so much.
hope to get down to Miami again soon.
I
And
know.
we need to get our tan on, so we're ready to go to. We need to go to Boca Chica again
Yeah.
on Paco's boat.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'd love to have you. And you can see, guys, a number of people joined us tonight. And I know that's because of you, the impact you had on people, the expertise you bring. So no other questions have been posted. So let's see, did something just come up? Okay, no. So the way I normally end class is I open up all the mics and let people have a few minutes to chat. So I guess we're done. I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off. And if you want to stick around, feel free to